So I got a really great question through via the YouTube comments, and it reads, could 500 series modules be used in mastering? Now, I am a very good person to answer this question because before our mastering studio looked the way that it does now, we did have all 500 series units. So everything, well, not everything, but we had a rack of 19-inch, and then we have two 500 series racks that were filled with units that we used for mastering. We had two Rupert Neve 542 tape saturators. We had a Shadow Hills Jewel Van de Graaff compressor. We had a Licia X filter, a Licia Expressor, and a Licia envelope. We also had the Marg EQ4s, two Cush Clariphonics, and a Bison 500, which was an MS unit. Now, what I will say about it is there's a reason we haven't got that in there now, and the reason for that is, the dedicated 19-inch rack versions are obviously, they've got more headroom for one. They're dedicated, so they're utilizing their own power. They're optimized a lot better. And when you look at 500 series units, you've got to put it into a rack, which is powered itself. And then you're kind of, the modules aren't necessarily optimized for the rack they're being put in. Which, that's literally the only cons to this, and they're they're not even really cons. One thing I will say straight away is, if you are going to put 500 series units into your for mastering purposes, buy the best rack you can possibly get. I originally had API, I think it was an API 8B, which is an 8-slot rack. I originally had that, and I thought, API it's the 500 series API format. So, you think the API rack is the best one to get. It turns out it wasn't. And I swapped it for a Wes Audio rack. It wasn't a Titan, it was a Super Carrier 2. Swapped it for that, and it was so much better than the API rack. It had less kind of noise. The API rack would, if you turned some of the knobs, they'd crackle slightly sometimes, and I just thought that was part of the unit. I used to get the old the kind of the WD, not WD-40, but the stuff that cleans the inside of the pots, removes any static. It turns out, and that never really kind of worked. It would just come back the next day. But it turns out that it was partly down to the API rack. And when I got this Super Carrier rack, none of that was apparent in it. And it then just kind of highlighted to me how important a good 500 series rack is. And it is very important, especially if you're planning on putting these modules in for mastering. Like, don't go, if you're gonna use 500 series for mastering, do not go and buy yourself a £200 Midas rack, because it's just not going to be good enough. Right, so on to the reasons why I used 500 series. Now, the great thing about using 500 series in mastering is that you can build over time. You can put yourself a nice 8-slot rack in, and you can go, right, first two, I'm going to put this in, and then a couple of months later, you can put your next two in, and you can build it over time. And realistically, I think, yeah, it is. It's a lot cheaper. I would say it's probably cheaper. Yeah, it's probably cheaper to build it in 500 series format than it is to build it in 19-inch racks. For instance, two Cush Clariphonics, I think, are about £500 each, which costs you about cost you £1,000 for a stereo pair. Now, this is something you've got to bear in mind. Because you're using it for mastering, you've got to buy everything in stereo pairs if you want to use it for mastering, because obviously stereo channel being mastering. You've got the option of Bison 500 unit, which will split mid side, which is brilliant because you can send EQ mid and side, which that really opens things up in 500 series. Where was we? What was we saying? Yeah, £1,000 for the Cush Clariphonic. So £1,000 for a Cush Clariphonic in 500 series format, and I think you're talking about 1900, maybe something around that, 2000 something, for the full 19-inch rack version. So you are getting it a lot cheaper, and often yeah, that they are a lot cheaper on the in the 500 series units. The other thing is you've got a massive selection in 500 series. Like EQs, you have literally an abundance of EQs. Same with compressors. There's so many great compressors in 500 series. And then you've also got special processing units such as the Neve tape saturator, where you're getting silk red, silk blue in that, and you can really make a difference using those. Now, what I will say is I got rid of my racks. Now, I got rid of my racks for a few reasons. Now, the reasons I took the racks out was because surface noise in 500 series was a lot greater than it was in dedicated 19-inch. This is what I found. It might not be true, but this is what I personally found. I found that there was a lot more surface noise in 500 series, and then when I switched it all to the 19-inch racks, there was a lot less surface noise. Why? Maybe it was because of maybe one unit was rather noisy in 500 series, which was causing the whole of the 500 series kind of chain to be noisy. Maybe it was the power, the actual rack itself, but ultimately it was a lot more noisier in 500 series format. Not massive, but it was noticeably noisier in 500 series. There was a lot more surface noise. So what we did to combat that was we just basically sold all of our 500 series, and we basically swapped the Cush Clariphonic 500 series for a Cush Clariphonic MS. We swapped the Mag EQ4M, EQ4 in 500 series for an EQ4M version. We swapped the Shadow Hills. We swapped that for the Shadow Hills mastering compressor, which we later sold because it just wasn't quite there. But that's another video. Then we swapped the Alicia X filter for an Alicia Music EQ. Then we swapped the Alicia Expressor for an Alicia Alpha, and then we swapped the Bison 500 for, what did we put in that was MS? Can't think now. You've got there was two of them. Yeah, we swapped that with the Cush Clariphonic MS. We got the MS version of Cush Clariphonic. What else was in that rack? Oh, and then the Rupert Neve Portico Rupert Neve 542 tape saturators we swapped for the Neve Portico 2. Now you can tell there by just listing what we swapped it for. We basically swapped like for like into 500 from 500 series into 19-inch rack, and the reasons were because of what I mentioned before: the surface noise. They've got their own dedicated power supplies. They're optimized for that unit. That unit is 100% optimized by the manufacturer, and not being dictated on how it sounds or how it's powered via the rack that it's put into, which is why manufacturers like Rupert Neve, they do their 500 series, and they also have their 500 series racks, which obviously the Rupert Neve stuff is all going to be optimized to work brilliantly on the Rupert Nee's rack. It's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like PCs, like Macs, a MacBook, for instance, being the Neve rack with all Neve. So everything's Mac, everything's made by Mac, done by Mac, optimized for Mac. And that creates a kind of a powerful working system. Whereas PC, you've got a lot of variations. So there's this manufacturer, this manufacturer, this manufacturer. So there's a few little things that can possibly go wrong, and certain things can't be optimized when you're doing a custom build of a PC. So maybe that's not the best analogy, but so yeah. I mean, we swapped all these things out, but what it tells you about swapping these things out is that everything we did have in our 500 series racks, we couldn't live without. So we did a direct swap for each of these, and we didn't want to do without the, like, move away from 500 series and then just not have what we had in 500 series, because the 500 series was unbelievably good. You were getting such a good sound, but we just fancied upgrading it. It was an expensive upgrade, and it technically, in terms of upgrades go, it was a very expensive upgrade, but didn't actually kind of, it didn't lift the level massive. Right, okay, so would I recommend 500 series for mastering? Entry level, going in, starting off, I'd say 100%. It's amazing to just start off, go straight in as for mastering. It will get you moving quicker. You'll move quicker. You'll insert more selection, and you'll add more to your chain quicker because it's more affordable. Like, put it this way, if you wanted to add a Alicia EQ, you're talking, let's say you're talking for the Alicia X filter, they do now the 19-inch version, which I think is about, oh God, I don't know how much they are these days. Are they 1800? I think the 500 series is like probably about 900 or something now, and then the X filter I think it's about 1800, maybe 1600, something like that. I'll have to check that. But I know there is a difference in price. So the X filter being in 500 series unit is a lot cheaper, but how much difference is there? There's very little, actually. I've tried both, and they, if you're just kind of getting a master chain going, it's minuscule differences, really. It really is just minuscule differences. Also, the Alicia stuff is Class A, so you literally, what I found with the Class A stuff is you literally get zero noise, literally zero noise, like surface noise, and then it is such good. And I'd put it in kind of mastering grade because it is really good. Now, the only other thing maybe to say about 500 series is because it's smaller format, it's a little bit more fiddly. The switches are a little bit smaller. The knobs can sometimes be a little bit smaller. Generally speaking, they're not, but it is possible that the 500 series is shrunk down slightly in comparison to the larger 19-inch rack versions. You might get a bigger knob with that. So, I mean, it's not massive. It's not a deal breaker, is it? But ultimately, you ask yourself, what's the purpose of putting this 500 series unit in, doing a master chain in 500 series? And if the answer is basically that, you want to get as much into your master chain for the money, 500 series is a brilliant way to go, because you are getting a lot more for your money, and also it's modular. You can switch things around. You can take things out, sell that, put that in, don't like it, sell it. Another good thing is buy stuff on eBay. If you buy, let's say you buy or Reverb, any of these, get something second hand. Generally speaking, 500 units hold their value. You could buy something for, let's say, £500 EQ. second hand. Take that, put that in, right? Love it, right? I want to swap it out for something else. You can stick it back up on eBay or Reverb for the exact same price that you bought it for, and it will sell. You will be able to sell it, and you will be able to just switch things in and out. And I did that. I did that for a long period of time until I found the right 500 series units that really work for me. And the ones, right, the 500 series that really worked for me, and I would fully recommend for mastering, um the Bison 500, I think it's IGS. Yeah, the Bison 500 is one that I would highly recommend, just because it gives your mastering chain mid-side capabilities. So you can put one unit in the mid, so that's just controlling the mono signal, and then another unit controlling the width, which is brilliant, especially if you put an EQ. And the good thing about 500 series is majority of stuff you can put in as stereo left and right. They're not too stereo. So if you put it in like that, the left channel controls your mid, which is your mono, and the right channel controls your width and your sides. So what's good with that is then you can put a say a Marg EQ4 in, and then get the airband just on the sides and really open up the sides with the airband, and it is brilliant. And I still use that process in the mastering studio because with the EQ4M and the Kush Clariphonic MS, because it is so effective. So the first one that I would recommend is the Bison 500. That is a really, really, really good unit. It does nothing in terms of processing, in terms of actually, like, it's not an EQ. You might think of it as like £600, I think, and you might think of it, well, it's something I've just paid £600. It doesn't technically do anything. It doesn't. It's not like an EQ that will physically EQ a sound. You'll need something to work with the Bison 500. But what it does do is it gives you the ability to use mid-side in your mastering chain, which is really, really handy. The other one that I would recommend is the Marg EQ4. That is really good. The reason that's really good for mastering is it's stepped, so it will click, 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 and you can recall that mastering chain really well. That's one thing you really want to look at when you do a 500 series mastering chain, or any mastering chain really. Anything mastering related, you want to have kind of clickable pots. Everything needs to be stepped. And the reason for this is for recall purposes. If you're ever asked to recall a session, trying to recall a session where, like an SSL EQ, where it's continuously all the way round to, I don't know, like 4 or 5 o'clock, and then round to, what's that, 7 o'clock. It's a full motion. It's not stepped in any way. You only get 0 stepped. So when the problem with that is you could be anywhere, and it's so hard to recall because you're not into, right, I am 1, 2, 3 steps off of the center, and to recall that is literally, you can recall that bang on. Whereas something where it's got like infinity increments, it's very difficult to recall. So always bear that in mind when you're buying a 500 series unit, that for mastering purposes, it's stepped. I always bear that in mind for 500 series and now with 19-inch racks, everything has to be stepped for recall purposes. Now, the other ones, I would recommend, the Rupert Neve 542 is very good. It's a tape saturator that adds a little bit of something. It adds silk red and silk blue, which are both incredibly good and very, very, very vital when it comes to mastering, especially the silk red, because you can give your song just so much life and it sounds unbelievable. And like what you got to kind of look at is what I would say is what I had in 500 series units. If I've got it in 19-inch rack version, it's brilliant, and it's, to me, an essential part of the kind of the mastering chain. What else would I recommend? The Elysius stuff is very good. That's not stepped though. I don't think. I think it has tiny little stepped increments. I don't know if it is stepped, to be honest, but it's Class A mastering, which means it's really good for mastering, and it is really good for mastering. I really, really enjoyed it. The X presser's great, the X filter's great, and the envelope is great. What else? I think that's really it. Everything that I listed before that I had in my mastering chain in 500 series was really good, and I really enjoyed it. And I would recommend it because if I used it, it was good. So yeah, I mean there is my kind of detailed thoughts on 500 series as a mastering, using it in a mastering chain. Would I recommend using it? Yes, I would, to start off with, but eventually as you get further down the line, I would recommend then switching out the 500 stuff into 19-inch dedicated kind of mastering grade rack units. 500 series was never, I don't think it was ever really designed for mastering. It was more designed towards the mixing, but it can by all means it can be used for mastering. I mean, I used it for mastering from 2012 to 2018. Yeah, so about 6 years. I had an ever evolving 500 series mastering chain. So yeah, I hope this was helpful, and any more questions, just shoot them in the comments.